There are known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. But there are also unknown knowns. We are the ancient and esoteric order of the Jackalope, a secret society devoted to unearthing and sharing this forgotten knowledge. Today's episode, Death from Above, by Chocolate. Presented by number 13. Otto Y. Schneering was flying high. Schneering founded the Curtis Candy Company in 1916 and had modest success selling chocolate all over the greater Chicagoland area. One of his best sellers was the candy cake, a circular nougat patty topped with nuts and enrobed in chocolate. In 1921, Schneering noticed the rising popularity of candy bars and decided to bring a cheap 5-cent bar to market to undercut his competitors. He refashioned the candy cake into something you might find a bit more familiar, the Baby Ruth. It was the right move at the right time. Soon the Baby Ruth was the best-selling candy bar in Chicago, but Schneering wasn't content. He wanted to take his company national. Schneering was a great believer in the power of advertising. If something had caught the public's fancy, Schneering would make sure the Baby Ruth name was all over it, or at least prominently displayed nearby. Over the years, he'd put the Baby Ruth name on racehorses, race cars, speedboats, sports teams, you name it. In 1923, the public's fancy had settled on airplanes. Powered flight was still new and exciting, a circus attraction that gathered crowds to see wing walkers, daredevils, and aerobats. So Schneering went down to Atlanta and hired Doug Davis, one of the era's most famous barnstorming pilots, to pull off the most audacious publicity stunt ever conceived. Davis hauled his stunt plane up to the booming metropolis of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, loaded it up with Baby Ruth candy bars, and, well, why don't I just read it to you straight from history, eh?
Within 5 minutes, Pittsburgh was a screaming pandemonium. Doug Davis was roaring through the business district a dozen feet above the streets, looping, rolling, and swooping in between buildings. Upper-floor office workers experienced the sensation of hearing a roar. Glancing out the window, they saw a flying machine only a few feet away. People rushed to the streets and rooftops. Children ran out of schools. Drivers left cars standing at intersections. Traffic was jammed for blocks and blocks. When he was absolutely certain that he had Pittsburgh's attention, Mr. Davis did what he'd been hired to do. He climbed to the proper altitude and dumped his cargo overboard. Down upon Pittsburgh rained hundreds of tiny parachutes, each carrying a 5-cent Baby Ruth bar. The pandemonium was doubled. People risked fall from windows reaching for the parachutes. Children ran out onto the streets. Without danger, traffic was hopelessly snarled, and adults fought for free candy. After a couple of hours, when Davis had run low on gas and had run out of Baby Ruths, Pittsburgh was restored to some sort of order. It was at once obvious to the city fathers that unless something was done quickly, Pittsburgh would be in constant turmoil, free candy or no free candy. The city council met in emergency session and passed an ordinance prohibiting airplane flights over the city and below a height of several hundred feet, and making candy bars on parachutes illegal.
Man, that's a great story, isn't it? It's almost too good to be true. Oh, did I say almost? My bad. It is actually too good to be true. When I first encountered this story, I wanted it to be true. And why wouldn't I? But I also wanted more information. And when I went digging, I immediately noticed one thing. Most stories quoted one or more paragraph of that long excerpt I just read, verbatim. The stories that didn't were usually citing a story that did, and none of the stories said where the text came from in the first place. But I was persistent, and eventually I found one story that credited the original source, a promotional pamphlet published by the Curtis Candy Company in the mid-1950s. Marketing is not particularly known for its academic rigor or for having a strict relationship with the truth. This meant that every published reference I had found so far was dependent on a single, unsourced publication. That's a problem, but not an insurmountable one. It just meant I'd have to do some more digging. Fortunately, the story gives us a few significant details that we can use to narrow our search. First, we have aviator Doug Davis. Davis turns out to be a real person, a pioneering aviator and stunt pilot known for being the rival to, and later the partner of, Buffalo Bill's niece Mabel Cody. Davis and Cody were even the founders of the Baby Ruth Flying Circus, which fits our story. Almost. It turns out the Baby Ruth Flying Circus doesn't come into existence until several years after 1923. No serious biography of Davis mentions his candy bombing of Pittsburgh, and the few biographies that do mention it are all quoting the Curtis pamphlet. Strike one. But I also knew where the candy bombing took place, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's another encouraging sign. In the 1920s, Pittsburgh is the 9th largest city in the United States, which means any incident of this scale is going to be widely reported in multiple newspapers across the nation. So off to newspapers.com I went. A quick search for Baby Ruth Pittsburgh 1923 turned up a big fat pile of nothing. Doug Davis Pittsburgh 1923 also got nothing. Adding quotation marks didn't help, and expanding the geographical region to the entire country didn't help either. This isn't to say searching for Baby Ruth was fruitless, though. I got a lot of results, but none of them for the candy bar. I got the Sultan of Swat, George Herman Ruth. I got movie stars and vaudevillians like Baby Ruth Sullivan and Baby Ruth Rowland. I got Grover Cleveland's daughter Ruth, who died of diphtheria at the age of 12 in 1904. I got so many foundlings and orphans that it quickly became tiresome to read about them all, though I did perk up when one of them was referred to as a swamp baby. I got a character in the musical A Trial Honeymoon. I got a brand of bread. I got a lifelike toy doll, a miniature alligator that lived in a Lancaster, Pennsylvania department store, and Baby Ruth, the world's only roller skating pony. And if you think I didn't fall down that rabbit hole for a whole evening, you don't know me very well. But there was nothing about the candy bar in 1923, and no mention of a promotional stunt causing widespread panic in a major American city. Strike 2. Well, maybe Curtis had the date wrong. That happens all the time. Our memories aren't great, and we have a tendency to mentally adjust events to fit better into our life stories. So I thought I'd expand the date range. Now, I know the story couldn't possibly have taken place earlier than 1921 because the Baby Ruth candy bar didn't exist before then. A search for Baby Ruth 1921 comes up with nothing. Same with 1922. I've already done 1923. In 1924, I do start to see results. In March, there's a national trademark registration for Baby Ruth, which mentions Curtis has been using it as a mark since 1921, which is a good sign. Shortly after that, we start to see notices that the brand has been licensed to regional confectioners. The brand name starts popping up in advertisements and want ads. And then, on November 28, 1924, I find the first real result, a small advertisement.
Look for the Baby Ruth airplane today and Saturday. Catch a parachute and get a bar of Baby Ruth candy.
It should be an encouraging find, proof that the candy bombing did take place. Except that this ad is running in Alabama and the Montgomery Advertiser. It's a whole year off and in the wrong part of the country. So I keep searching. A follow-up article mentions that Davis's affiliation with Baby Ruth is something new. After 1924, there are so many references to the Baby Ruth candy bombings that I start to lose count. So they were definitely a real thing. But there are no reports of widespread panic, and none of them seem to have taken place over city centers, and all of them appear to have been advertised well in advance. I can't find any taking place in Pittsburgh, though. The closest I can get is an Altoona air show in 1925, over 2 years and 100 miles away. So it's not looking good. Foul tip, strike 2. But I've got one more trick up my sleeve. The original story mentions that after the candy bombing, the Pittsburgh City Council passed an ordinance prohibiting airplanes from flying over the city and making candy bars on parachutes illegal. Now, Pittsburgh's current municipal code doesn't have any such prohibitions, but municipal codes change quite a bit over time. So last October, I spent an evening in the Allegheny County Law Library, poring through the municipal record. I pulled volumes from 1921 to 1925, and I found nothing. Nothing about candy bars, nothing about airplanes, nothing about advertising. No resolutions, no ordinances. Nothing. Strike 3. That would seem to be the end of it. Almost. I did find something in all my research that I didn't tell you about. A short article from the Atlanta Constitution on December 18, 1924. It's only 4 sentences long, so I'll just read the whole thing for you.
Doug H. Davis, Georgia aviator who has been distributing samples of candy from an airship over the city, was fined $10 in police court today. This is the first aviator to be arrested here. The arrest was made by a motorcycle officer after Davis landed. It is a violation of a city ordinance to drop anything from an airship in Macon.
What do you know? And it's even right there in the current Macon-Bibb County Municipal Code, Section 310. It shall be unlawful for any person or persons to drop from any aircraft, pamphlets, papers, noise-producing devices, or other things. And that's as close as we can get to the legendary Pittsburgh candy bombing run. It happened in a different year, in a different part of the country. It didn't cause a widespread panic, and it didn't prompt the city to change its laws, but was instead a violation of an existing ordinance. It makes perfect sense. Doug Davis was based out of Atlanta and operated mostly in the South. Newspaper articles show that Baby Ruth is aggressively expanding in that part of the country. Why wouldn't the bombing run start down there? So how did the story get changed? Well, marketing. Moving the date from 1923 to 1924 is probably just a matter of poor record keeping and hazy personal recollections. Moving the location to Pittsburgh, a city with 10 times the population of Macon, is just trying to make the story seem more important. And changing a $10 fine into a ripping yarn about people falling out of buildings and panic in the streets? Hucksterism, pure and simple. So there you have it. Candy bombings did happen, but this particular one did not. For 70 years, credulous people have been regurgitating marketing copy without bothering to do the legwork to verify it. Which is a shame, because it really was too good to be true. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to enjoy myself a Baby Ruth. Oh, that's good. So, it's hard to credit sources when you're disproving an event, but I'll take a stab at it. First, let me thank Steve Almond's excellent book, Candy Freak, which is where I first encountered this story. It's a great read, and he even has a chapter about one of my favorite candies, Goldenberg's Peanut Chews. Check it out if you get a chance. Second, let's thank newspapers.com for being a great resource. They're a lot chewier than I remember. And finally, I'd like to send some special thanks to Lori Hagen, a reference librarian at the Allegheny County Law Library, for taking a personal interest in helping me research the municipal record. Thanks, Lori. You're the best. Oh, I got a nut stuck in my tooth. Ugh. This episode was produced by David White for the Ancient and Esoteric Order, the Jackalope Podcast, and is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. All rights reserved, all wrongs reversed. The script of this episode, along with sources, links, and more, can be found on our website at orderthejackalope.com. You can keep up with our research, release schedule, and more on our social media accounts. We can be found at Order Jackalope on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, or your enemies, or even total strangers. We're not picky. Hey, you! Want to join the fastest growing secret society in the nation? Of course you do. But before you can be initiated into this hidden secrets, you gotta share a hidden secret of your own. Visit our website at orderofthejackalope.com for more information.